Welcome back everyone. In today's session, we begin our discussion on strategic management, which is often referred to as business policy. Strategic management is about the long-term direction of an organization, the big picture decisions and actions that shape its performance over time. Unlike operational management, which deals with the day-to-day operation of a firm or company, strategy is about where the organization is headed and how it plans to get there. This involves scanning the environment, strategic formulation, implementing them, and continuously evaluating and controlling outcomes. We will first look at the basic model of strategic management and then move into environmental scanning, a critical step that acts like a radar for firms to detect opportunities and threats. From there, we will explore Porter's 5 forces dealing with industry analysis, which explains why some industries are more profitable than others, and how firms can position themselves strategically within their environment. By the end of this session, you should have a clearer understanding of how external and internal factors shape business performance and how managers can use frameworks like Porter's 5 forces to navigate competition effectively. So let me begin with the basics of strategic management. The simple definition of strategic management is about the decisions and actions managers take to secure an organization's long-term success. It is not just about planning, but also about scanning its environment and formulating strategies and implementing those strategies, and finally evaluating and controlling the outcomes. This cycle ensures organizations remain competitive and adaptable. And this is the main textbook where I have drawn heavily the inputs and the resources for this session and the subsequent sessions. This slide presents the basic model of strategic management. It begins with scanning both external and internal environments, and then based on this, managers form strategies. So this is the strategy formulation, that is the process of investigation, analysis and decision making that provides the company with the criteria for attaining competitive advantage. These strategies are then implemented through programs, budgets and procedures. Finally, performance is evaluated. This is the final stage, evaluation and control. And finally, performance is evaluated and controlled, ensuring alignment with organizational objective. The process is cyclical with feedback driving improvements. So let me now list out 4 key dimensions of strategic management. One is environmental scanning, second one is strategic formulation, third one is strategy implementation, and the last and final one is evaluation and control. So what I am going to do is in this session I will focus on the first key dimension, that is environmental scanning, and in the next section we will talk about strategy formulation. So one of the most critical steps is environmental scanning is part of strategic management. So here managers identify environmental risk and opportunities, and then managers use tools like Porter's industry analysis, which help them in understanding competitive forces. So effective scanning ensures organizations stay ahead of disruptions and capitalize the emerging trends. So this is a more detailed version of strategic management process. So you can see in the beginning, the first process is the environmental scanning, the one of the key dimension. It has two key elements. One is external environment and the second one is internal environment. So the environmental scanning here, as I mentioned, it includes both external and internal environments, including, you can see here, natural resources, societal environment, task environment. These are all external environmental factors which are not under the direct control of the firms and industry. But the internal environment means these are all mostly with the firms themselves. It deals with their technical know-how, their assets, their skill, competencies and knowledge, and structure the chain of command and the culture, the beliefs, expectations, values, etc. So in this session, our focus will be mainly on the first core block, but the other three blocks, but that is strategic formulation and strategy implementation and evaluation and control, and we will discuss these subsequently at that time, and we will use the same, this frame or this figure I will reuse at that time. Moving ahead, this diagram shows how the various environmental variables related to environmental scanning. These are different layers of environmental variables. So at the core, you can see these are the internal environment. Internal environment, as I already mentioned, this belongs to the firms themselves. So that means they have more control over the internal environment. It includes the structure, culture and the resources that are all available with the firms themselves. And the surrounding of this, so you can see the next layer, this surrounding, this is the task environment. These are the task environment, or most of these are related to the industry where this firm belongs. So surrounding this is the, as I mentioned, this is the task environment, including shareholders, suppliers of raw materials and the suppliers of the output to the market, and the competitors and employers and trade associations, communities, creditors, customers, special interest groups, governments, etc. So these are all the second layer, that is mainly the task environment. Then comes finally the broader environment, that is most broader in sense of kind of external environment. That means it includes the societal factors, economic forces, political, you can see here, societal, economic, technological, political, legal forces and socio-cultural forces. So these all belong to, we can say that we can call it overall as a broader framework, that is societal environment. So strategic management requires understanding of all these interconnected layers by the management, and then accordingly identify the opportunities and challenges and threats and act accordingly. To systematize environmental scanning, managers often use the STEEP framework. This is the STEEP analysis framework they often use, and this covers the, as you can see from here, some important variables in the societal environment, which is the subject of the STEEP analysis. This includes socio-cultural aspects that I have listed all these here, starting with lifestyle changes, career expectation, consumer activism, and all these aspects. You can go this one by one to get a clear-cut understanding of the socio-cultural aspects. And then we have technological aspects. You can see the R&D, investment and other aspects, including internet availability, telecommunication infrastructure. And then we have economic aspects, mainly the GDP trends and other key economic variables which I already mentioned in the previous sessions: interest rate, money supply, inflations, these kind of key variables. Then we have ecological aspects, that is the environmental protection laws and the climate change and the global warming. all these aspects are covered in the ecological dimensions. And then the political and legal trends, this also part of the environment, and you can see the antitrust regulation, environmental rules, and the recent tariff, global tariff, and the trade agreements between countries. All these are part of the STEEP analysis. So in this slide, you can see that the task environment, it focuses on more immediate stakeholders. So more immediate stakeholders associated with the firms and industries, and this includes, as you can see, customers. You can see customers, competitors, suppliers, governments, and communities. So analyzing these groups helps managers to identify the opportunities and threats. So strategic factors emerging from these analysis directly influence decisions on market entry, pricing, and competitive positioning by the firms. So moving further, the competitive advantage arises when organization can identify and respond external changes faster than their competitors. So it's just like early bird. So those who are early to identify the challenges and responding early, they will survive in the industry, and they will make more profit, and they will be more competitive. So research shows successful firms have well-defined systems and that integrate planning and review. However, what happens that often managers' personal biases can create some kind of strategic myopia, where they ignore unfamiliar. You can see the strategic myopia. What happened that they ignore unfamiliar information, but these are all important information, but when it comes, because they see that they are unfamiliar to this information, they often prefer to ignore that kind of information. But practically these are all going to be very important in parameters for the decision making for the firms. So this is critical to selectively monitor the most relevant external factors. So that means the firm must focus on the most essential external factors, not identifying or not prioritizing each and every external factor. Instead, which is more critical to the firms, they should be focusing on those external factors. So let me also introduce to some literature related to environmental scanning. So the academic research highlights that environmental scanning is an evolving area of research. So studies show that external factors, especially the competitors' marketing action, often matter more for business performance than internal strategy choices. So this underlines the need for firms to continuously monitor external forces and incorporate them into their strategic decision making. So I am showing you the screenshot of some of the research papers. I would suggest you, I have also given the citations here, so you can go through that. You will get the full text. Please go through that. So this all, the environmental scanning is like a radar for business, detecting signals from external environment. So research has consistently shown that external factors, particularly the competitors' marketing mix elements or their strategies, often matter more than companies' internal strategies. So scholars emphasize the need to fill the research gap to understand how firms can better use scanning to anticipate changes. So overall, what I am arguing here based on this research finding is that it's important for the firms to understand, identify the external forces, the external environmental factors, because these are all not under the control of the firms and not under the control of the industry. So this is important for the firms to really understand what their competitors are doing and what are the different environmental factors, how they often changes. And giving some more inputs on this. So environmental scanning system give managers the tools to monitor trends and even weak signals in the environment. By intercepting these early, firms can prepare long-term strategies, and ultimately effective scanning enhances organizational adaptability and performance. Let me now introduce you to the Porter's approach to industry analysis. So Michael Porter, he's the expert in this field, and this has been his contributions have been widely acknowledged and have been used by firms and industries for making strategy formulation and implementation. So it has 5 components mainly. You can see here is the cornerstone of industry analysis. It has 5 components. These shape the competition and profitability. So you can see here is the power of suppliers and threats of substitutes and rivalry among competitors and threats of new entrants and power of buyers. So that means the firms and industries profit and competition, it depends from not only from bargaining powers of suppliers and buyers to the threat of new entrants and substitutes and existing rivalry. So talking about the key aspect, that is the threat of new entrant. So when a new firms enter an industry, they increase competition, and you know that they will be reducing the profit margin of existing firms in the industries. But industries they also have to understand the kind of entry barriers that are often prevalent, such as high capital requirement, and all these sometimes make the entry difficult. So however, you can see, for example, even though that kind of entry barriers are there, however, some kind of disruptive entry take place. For example, in 2016, you may recall there was the geo entries. What happened that is completely disrupted the market, because what geo did was that they did a predictive pricing strategy. That means internet and the call, they sold it at a very low price. That's called predictive pricing. Such a low price is actually put lots of pressure on the other firms, incumbent firms in the industry, and they are also forced to reduce the price to sustain, to retain their existing customers. So that often happen, though even though there are entry barriers. You know that entry into the telecom market is not that easy, because there are lots of big capital investment is required, and already well established firms are already there. However, Jio made a disruptive entry in 2016, and similarly the US automobile industry since 1930s offer high capital barriers. However, sometime recently, you know that Tesla made an entry into the highly competitive US automobile industry. But that means the main point I want to highlight here is that there are entry barriers for new entrant. However, sometime by technology or because the entrants also have lots of resources on their hand, and then they have technological advance, then they often break that kind of entry barriers. So moving further, let me list out some of the other possible entry barriers. One is called economies of scale. So economies of scale comes from spreading costs over large volumes. For instance, car manufacturers are reducing per unit cost as production expands. That means if a firm produce large number of goods or services, then you know that the marginal cost of production declines, because they enjoy the economies of scale. Because of the large scale production, the unit cost declines. That is one. So then because of that, the existing firms, if already they are doing large scale production, so because of that, and it will be difficult for a new firm to enter, because after entering they need to capture the market. So suppose they get only a very small part of the meager part of the market, that means they can produce only small volume of goods. So then they won't enjoy the economies of scale, because when they produce large number of goods and services, then the firms are getting the cost advantage. But the new firms, they can't enjoy that kind of cost advantage. Then there are other factors, that is the product differentiation is there. So product differentiation means the strong brands they create high entry barriers. For example, you can see in the case of toothpaste, you know that already well established firms are there, Sibaka, the Colgate, Close-Up, etc. So you know that they have created a high brand value. So it will be difficult for any new entrant to make presence in this market, because they already created a high brand value, and they also create product differentiation. So between even the toothpaste, you can see that if you use Colgate or Close-Up, the kind of psychological feeling because of the advertisement and all, it has been created that all these products are unique and differ from one to another. Then the capital requirements, because you know that especially to make entry, some of the businesses require large capital requirement, especially the finance firms. For example, if you want to start a bank or an insurance company, you need a large capital requirement. So that is often difficult for new firms. And then switching cost, that also another concern, because when they move from for consumers, if they move from one product to another, maybe for example, you can see if you have been using Microsoft Office and you have been using Excel, and then it will be difficult for you to use another software. So then if you introduce a new software in the market, or new MS Office kind of product, people won't switch immediately from what they have been using. So Windows and MS Office and this kind of product, that make the switching difficult, and there is high switching cost is involved. And in addition, the government policy also matters, because they also influence the entry through licensing and regulations. So let me give you a little bit more insight on the economies of scale, and also a related concept called economies of scope. And the economies of scale, I already mentioned this one. That means the cost advantages from producing a large volume of goods and services. Then another related concept is called economies of scope. Economies of scope, on the other hand, it comes from producing multiple products together. So just look at State Bank of India. You know the State Bank of India is one of the largest commercial bank in the country, and SBI, because it's already have a large infrastructure base, it has a large technical and managerial skills, so it can easily set up insurance company, pension businesses, and other banking services through the same network. So that is called economies of scope. So economies of scope means cost saving from producing a variety of products using the shared resources. So it occurs where producing a variety of products to reduce cost. So overall, the economies of scale and economies of scope both reduce per unit cost and strengthen competitive advantages for firms. So the main point I am presenting here is that the existing firms, how they can enjoy economies of scale and economies of scope, and it then prevents the entry of new firms into the industry, because they are the new entrant. It will take time for them to develop economies of scale and economies of scope after entering the business. Continuing this further, rivalry among firms is intense when industries have many competitors, and when growth is slow. So in such cases, firms are often resort to price wars. If products are commodities like gasoline, competition is even more cutthroat. When industries have high fixed cost, like airlines, you know that airlines have high fixed cost, because each airline costs $1 million. So firms fight fearlessly to fill capacity. So not only that, they have exit barriers, because such as specialized assets, for example, airline, just think about airlines. So they cannot, suppose the airlines is making losses, they cannot freely exit, because they already invested in airlines. It cannot be used for other purposes. So they have to continue in the business. So it forces companies to keep competing, because even when they make loss, they have to compete, because the thing is that the asset they already acquired, it cannot be used for other purposes. So similarly, add in diverse strategies of rival, and the rivalry become even stronger in the business. So beyond rivalry and entry barriers, the points that we discussed until now, industries also faces risk from substitutes. So powerful buyers and suppliers and they also face risk from substitutes and powerful buyers and suppliers. So stakeholders like government and unions add further complexity. Finally, complement is firms that add value together like Intel and Microsoft can significantly influence industry dynamics. So to conclude this session, let us connect the dots. So we began with environmental scanning, the radar that helps firms detect and respond to external changes. So the research shows that external factors, particularly what competitors do, often have a stronger impact on business performance than the internal strategies alone. So we then moved to Porter's five forces, which provided structured way to analyze industry competition. So each force, from the threat of new entrants to the power of buyers and suppliers, shapes profitability. So the entry barriers, economies of scale and scope, and the intensity of rivalry all determines how attractive an industry really is. So finally, we also saw that industry dynamics are influenced by stakeholders, substitutes, and even complementers like Intel and Microsoft. So together, environmental scanning and Porter's framework give us powerful tools to understand industries, anticipate challenges, and sustain competitive strategies and advantages. Thank you for watching this session. See you in the next session. Thank you.